that life is simple. Life is simple. And you can do what you want with that, sitting with your eyes open or closed, and allow yourself to go to that deeper frequency of thinking, to that thinking that it's not random, it is very much pointed towards your personal growth and development. So to go along with this statement of life is simple, I guess a question should be attached to it. The question is it? Is it simple? And you can keep your eyes open or closed, it's up to you. So then, what comes out of that? That brief encounter that you have taken into asking a question which has been asked to you. And what's incredible to me is that it's varied. It's varied in the ability to focus the mind long enough to go into that deeper place where thoughts begin to really mean something. This is a part of the practice of meditation, is to strengthen yourself in such a way that we begin to move ourselves away from the need of bouncing around in this sometimes meaningless, other times confused, but often well-intended thought process, and ground ourselves deeper into what is meaningful. And I believe that some of us had that experience, bouncing around. So what helps me to connect to a contemplative quality of mind is to relax and to maintain a relaxation and no longer attempt to think with my mind as isolation of being mind, but to start to just simply become that which I feel. So if I then give this request to have a contemplative mind directed towards a particular question, and then I begin to feel that rather than think that. Now this feeling quality is leaning more towards the contemplation, the wisdom, seeing the individual amongst all the books in the globe and contemplating life, pulling on the beard, or however you see it. And that sounds quite simple. So within that simplicity of an approach, I then create an availability of a level within my experience which is conducive to developing understanding. And to retain the simplicity is to really be truthful and honest with what you know and what you do not know, with what you understand and what you are developing understanding of. And if we can retain that simplicity in the approach, then we become teachable. We gain the ability to learn from our experience. And the experience which I'm pointing this conversation towards is the experience of a deepening meditation practice. So to be able to sit at the threshold and witness a whole new state of consciousness rising within your own experience. And then over time, not right away, but over time, learning how to sustain that. Now this is a meditation practice. But in the simple act of being with yourself and learning how to sustain this rising level of consciousness, we actually simplify all of the experiences which occur on the outside of that meditation time. Because it is a state of consciousness which is being experienced and weaving itself within the very fibers of your physical, of your energetic, of your mental. And that combination of the three gives an avenue, gives way for pure intelligence to begin to influence the systems of your being. So not just body, but the whole being is influenced by this intelligence. So one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this deep topic of death is because of fear. And fear is what generally holds us in complexity. And in this regard, it's simply a fear that, can it be that easy? So then we reroute into increasingly more complex formulas to attempt to harness that next step. So to begin to really see your life for what it is, but on a very much a basic level, see your life for what it is. And then move from there. This is the suggestion of thousands of years of process within a meditation practice. So what that means is you simply sleep, you wake up, you do specific things, you feed yourself, you clothe yourself. At that rudimentary level, life is very, very simple. So then from our basic needs function, everything from that moment onwards is just garlands or decorations that we apply into the experience of life. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is because complexity tends to be an avenue for some level of pain or suffering. Right? It gives you a headache. You need to take a rest. All of these symptoms of complexity. So when we get into that position where we are confronted and sometimes inundated or even overwhelmed by the complexity that the mind is producing within the meditation, we can very logically just begin to go back into what it is that we do on the base level. And on the base level, when you're sitting, all you are doing is breathing, looking, feeling. And then from that simplicity, we then engage in the complexity. So then my question to you is then, where does the complexity come from? And why is it there? And you guys can make comments or questions whenever you'd like. One of the side effects or symptoms of a meditation practice is a still quality of mind. It's simply a byproduct of your efforts towards becoming comfortable with yourself. So in my own personal research, I found that an agitation coming from inside the individual is what wraps around a concept, which is holding that thought manifestation in an orbit, close enough for the individual to see. And I feel that must happen for a reason, or else it would not exist. Quite potentially, we do that as human beings, create this complexity, so that then we feel that we're thinking our way through it. And thinking our way through it is very much a Western philosophy approach. But if we can look at that as it's coming up as something that, in a sense, has been constructed, has been created for a very good reason, and if you can truthfully begin to do a Q&A with yourself and come to a conclusion, a simple one: do I need it any longer? Does it need to be there? And it's simply yes or no. And if the answer is yes, then maybe enjoy it while it's still there, because you feel that it must be present. And if the answer is no, well then it's time to then move on. It's time to then let go of the image which is positioning itself so uniquely within your meditation that you have no choice but to look at it and feel it. It's that simple. You just simply move on. You let go. And that seems quite logical and real. If I'm holding the clock, I put the clock down, I'm no longer holding it. But somehow I pick the clock up unconsciously again. So now there's this relationship between what's occurring within your subconscious and what's happening within your conscious. So consciously you've decided it's time to move on. Subconsciously, you have not decided that it's time to move on, which could become incredibly complicated if we wanted it to. But meditation is the practice of simplicity. So therefore, we're looking at it simply. The subconscious wants to maintain its relationship where the conscious is willing to let go of it. So what that means in my world, when I'm working with something like this, it is more meditation and making jokes as it's happening, because I cannot believe that it's here again. Amazingly, it's here again. And I say it lightly like that because it's not very rational. And really, if we can lend from the Eastern philosophies, there's a component of karma involved. So you're supposed to be experiencing it for a specific reason. What is the reason? There is an element, if you look at it, of a cycle that goes around like this. So samskara, you could say, all of these little experiences which are incurring that you don't necessarily enjoy the sensations that come from it. And that's a reality. We all have that. This is part of being a human. So even if we've decided that, okay, logically I'm no longer needing that which is in front of me, but underneath it's saying we're not quite finished with it yet. Well, then what is the approach then for your meditation practice? The simplest approach would then be to do what your technique is developing you to do. And that's two parts. So always within a meditation practice, there's two. One is the technique that you learn externally, and the other is the technique that you learn internally. The external technique is what guides you towards that internal piece of instruction. And if we can simply follow a path of meditation into the deepest place of the experience, and if we can just keep following that path again and again and again, what begins to happen is that the landscape slowly over time begins to change. And it's inevitable. This is life. All is in flux. All is changing. And as we steady ourselves upon the aspects which a meditation practice asks you to look at, then what we begin to see is the space between all of the activity. So we're not looking at any one aspect of a thought. We're looking around it, in between it, and knowing that there's something there, and we already understand what it is because it's come from inside of you. But what is happening is when we look between the thought, we're no longer looking at the complexity, but we're engaging within the simplicity. that exists within the space between. And because your awareness is so bright, you begin to shine light towards this unconscious or subconscious activity, and pushing very, very gently your conscious mind towards the subconscious experience. So what's happening besides a thought is all kinds of sensations are moving through you. And because we're allowing the sensations to pass through us freely, through the aid of the nervous system, we are working through a lot of those thought formations, which then become emotions. So the lightening and softening of the thought is because of the strength of your pure awareness and your ability to relax, so that you can just finally work out that little kink which occurred. And all of life can be like that. Little kink occurred here, little kink occurred there, and we just soften into it to make balance. It's very easy to make balance because it's always present. Just like it's very easy to create complexity because it's always there. We have nothing and we have everything simultaneously occurring. It now just depends where we place our attention. All of us are in a very unique position, because the simplicity, if you were to go all the way in, this is the monk, has no obligations, no family life, no work schedule, just gets up, bathes, eats, and goes on with the day. Just simple, simple. So we get an opportunity to see both worlds and take this simplicity, this pure, through pure awareness and consciousness, into the complexity, and allow the complexity just to simply burn a little bit, create heat. And that heat that is created is just creating a pure experience of that complex presentation. So that burning sensation that occurs is when we do not any longer follow that tendency of complexity. So instead, we're adhering to the simplicity, and we're bringing forth an experience within our life that is conducive to the base level of that which you know, which you feel, which you understand is your balance, the base level of it. Does this make sense? And how we can understand the base level of the experience is through simply closing our eyes. In my mind, there is no simpler way to engage with understanding the who's and the why's and the how's than closing the eyes. Any questions?
One thing that comes to my mind One thing that comes to my mind is just how alien the simplicity can be at first.
Mm-hmm.
It's really not like anything maybe you've ever experienced before, and it doesn't feel right, and it doesn't feel wrong, and it doesn't feel good, and it doesn't feel bad. It doesn't have any of those qualities that a state of complexity, in a state of complexity, you might normally assign to it. So it can be scary to come up against those things all of a sudden, because you don't really know what you're getting into when you start a meditation practice.
Mm-hmm.
You actually don't. People tell you it's a good thing. You hear it's good for your mind. You hear yoga is good for the spirit, whatever initially ropes you into it. But there's really no way of preparing yourself for what you might find if you practice and practice and practice and practice.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that's where maybe some of that fear can come from, and you might not want to let go of that complexity because it's what you know and what you have known, and it can be hard to let go of that because you maybe aren't sure what to make of it yet.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with you. Yes, I would definitely agree with you. One comment that I hear a lot is that it's boring. Nothing is happening. This is boring. I'm staring at the back of my eyelids right now, which is very true. But it's like any conversation. With just a little bit of stimulation, you begin to find that actually there's a lot there. There's a lot being said. But if we do not engage, do not engage this quality of space, then we will not be able to communicate. So one has to go first, generally. And this is the awareness. Your awareness is piercing directly in front of you, and you soften. And if we still hold and wait, it becomes incredibly boring. But if you begin to look and then see that actually there's something moving inside there, I can see it vibrating. I can feel it. And then begin to sense increasingly more subtle expressions of that which you see, of that which you feel. Now there's an infinite scale of experience that exists there. What you classify as your life is actually a holding pattern that you've decided is your reality. And the older we get, the more secure we are in maintaining that, which means the less we begin to explore. This is why in all the wisdom traditions, every single one of them, they say to soften, to relax, and to allow yourself to go outside of the zone which you consider to be comfortable, and make comfort out of that discomfort, again and again and again. Now, the great thing about meditation is that sometimes the initial byproduct is everything that you do not want to see. So someone closes their eyes and they're like, wow, this is my mind. And this grenades being thrown around like it's a full-on war zone. But very quickly, if you can maintain just the simplicity of sitting, the simplicity of this is my practice, I'm actually just going to sit. And whatever comes up, comes up. Whatever I see, I see. Very quickly, all of that dissolves, and then what begins to manifest is beauty. And I'm definitely not going to sit here and tell you how beautiful meditation is in terms of its ability to produce sensation, or what you should and should not feel. But from my own personal perspective, nothing has ever been more beautiful than that to date, and I'm now 37. But nothing has ever compared to that. I mean, tears freely streaming down my face as I stare at my eyelids. This is something incredible to me. But that's just one aspect of the practice of meditation. Experiencing the beauty, this beautiful bhav, and going into the layers towards this anandamaya kosha, so this bliss body state. There's many, many practical applications. And one of the practical applications is psychology. So meditation is a component of a whole and complete psychology. Because we get to come to terms with ourselves, get to know ourselves, get to see ourselves within the light or the lens that we've produced, but also gain the insight and knowledge of how to then replace that lens with a more updated version. And that updated version always, continuously will show you a depth which you've not ever seen before, a height which you've not ever seen before. And if you're really honest, which we're all working towards that continuously, but if you're really honest, then that new lens becomes an impeccable teacher. Because you see right away that, wow, so this is no longer needed, or I don't need to speak like that any longer, or why am I engaging with this person, or maybe I should invest my money in that and not this. And the practical applications become endless. And the simple reason for that is because of a magnetic field which we call our mind. And this field which we call our mind is interconnected, wrapping itself all the way around this wonderful globe, and also projecting as far as you can see outwards. And this is just simple reality. But like you said, that becomes a bit scary and daunting to think about. So instead of expanding in that way, we just simply enclose ourselves into a reality that we consider safe and stay. And then slowly, when you're ready, over time, your meditation begins to pull the petals apart, down one by one, to then expose the beauty of the flower on all levels. The scent of it, what it looks like, what it feels like. Literally, all your senses are being engaged by the beauty of the flower, which is considered to be pratyahara. So this is now the withdrawing of the senses in towards deep self-center, where then we have enough stamina and enough strength to reveal the truth of it, which is you are not that in its simple form. You are not that. What you think you are not. You are greater. This is not cliche quite yet. This is not attempting to make you feel good. It is the truth. The simple truth of it. You are greater than that which you are holding as your reality. And what I've noticed is that many times this greater component, sometimes people feel that it's more, or that it's hanging out with J-Lo, or things like this nature, of that nature, I should say, which then gets us hung up all over again within the complexity. So society plays a role, because remember, we have this magnetic field which we call the mind, but it's interconnected. It's woven into everything. So what I'm saying is that the greatness of your being is actually your ability to sit, quite potentially, and then to stand up, and then to go get a glass of water, and then to go sit in nature, and then to have a wonderful tea, and be completely content, imagine. Not needing anything more than that. J-Lo could be sitting next to you or not, and it does not matter. Now that reality, then put forth into a workplace, then put forth into an entrepreneur, then put forth into a corporate experience, then put forth into a banker, begins to do incredible work, because the mind is actually present. The body is active and engaged, and the energy is flowing freely. So this is actual freedom. And then what your wish is will then be granted. And this is, again, the simple truth, and it's the promise from all the wisdom traditions, just coming flooding like that. Your wish is then granted. This sounds great. But the wish is not being spoken by the thinking mind, the mind which is engaged in society, which is grasping at these straws. The wish is coming from the deepest component of who you are. And the congruency begins to occur when we make room for that deep quality of self to rise as high as it can into the conscious experiences of your mind. And generally we find that as we get older, we start to let go of the race, let go of the hold that you have on the dream, and begin to just subside. And then the authenticity of who you are begins to rise, and it's always within the simplicity. But if we can stimulate that and bring rise to that inner quality of who we are, and then make it dynamic in its ability to engage the world. Now, this is a true evolution of human consciousness. And it's quiet, and it's simple. It's inside of you. And sometimes you're the only one that knows that it's happening, and it's really happening. It's rising up. It's happening. You're doing it. Which then starts to frame your mind in such a way that then you can actually see what it is that you wish out of this experience within the body. And what we can really yield from this incredible magnetic genius you call your mind. So now that was a very simple explanation. And how I develop myself to be able to align to a flow of information is to take my body, my breath, and my mind and make the three one. So that then over time there's no separation between the activity of the body, the activity of the breath, and the activity of the mind. And then I simply use all that I have as everything. All that I have as everything. So meaning all that I have is my body. All that I have is doing the breathing. So now experience your breath. What happens when you inhale? It feels like it's going somewhere, doesn't it? It feels like it's going somewhere. That's why if I use all that I have in order to do that, the breath is quite simply and literally going everywhere. And then what happens when you exhale? I personally relax when I exhale. And I let go, I loosen my hold. So then I'm doing this on every level. And then I inhale again, but when I inhale, I feel stronger. And what am I strengthening? I am strengthening all that still exists after I let go of it. So imagine you're squeezing and then you're releasing. You're squeezing and then you're releasing. You're squeezing and you're releasing. So all of that which you hold on to, which takes up energy, which makes up the fiber of who you are, is on a continuous basis, ideally being let go of. Let go, let go, let go. So that only what exists there is eventually, over time, the truth. Not some expansive truth that may change everyone's minds about this and that, but just simply the truth that you hold for yourself at this moment in time. Now, when it comes to the mind is the magnetic genius that is either pulling or pushing. When you feel your mind, do you not become immediately fascinated? Immediately fascinated. So if everything is mind, well then that means the quality that I experience that brings pure amazement is infused in that which is everything. So my body, my breath, and my mind are now everything. And that experience of oneness gives way to an avenue through alignment. The avenue of alignment is now this intelligence that flows through. And you all know what I'm talking about. The intelligence. Because you ask yourself this higher form of self, this intelligence, questions all day long. And sometimes you receive an answer and other times you don't. But if we can strengthen the avenue of this intelligence so that then it does not have to go through the gauntlet of your reality as you've constructed or held it, but it just simply has pure, clean passage straight through. And we get to a certain place where we actually begin to trust the intelligence that exists there, rather than denying it, rather than going back to do more research, but just simply we trust it. It will, quite simply, open up to the reservoir of wisdom, the reservoir of intuition. It's a reservoir, and it's not yours. You do not own it. It's not for any one individual. It is the reservoir that we've been drinking from since the beginning of time. And that reservoir, like everything, has a sensation. And that sensation has been coined as being bliss. This is the Anandamaya Kosha. Your intuition, that's why we engage with it. We want that feeling. It feels right, it feels good, it feels clean, it feels pure. But that intuition, which is fueling the intelligence, is literally the off-glowing of the individual soul experience. And is simply that. individual soul experience gains opportunity to express itself. So now, if we can follow this bliss, this is all we have to do. But it takes a slight amount of rigor, because it's not feeling good. It's not being happy. It's not the quick fix experience. It's the sustained. When you go to sleep, how do you feel? When you wake up, how do you feel? It's the consistency, those bookends, going to sleep, waking up, going to sleep, waking up, going to sleep, waking up, going to sleep, waking up. Now, if we get to know the consistency, which, let's say, Anandamaya Kosha, and then we apply meditation, going to sleep, meditation, waking up. We begin to infuse all levels of our consciousness over time. And then we just simply follow that bliss. Follow it continuously in towards the self. And it's that simple. Nothing challenging about it, nothing complex about it, all simple. Please close your eyes. Keeping the eyes closed, bring full deep breaths into the body. Keeping the eyes closed, bring your gaze into the space just there in front of you. And with soft intensity, maintain the integrity of the space. Now very gently, very slowly, allow the eyes to open. And observe how you feel. Do not move too quickly with your mind into being awake or engaged. Just let the softness stay. And the wisdom of a meditation begins to arise when we recognize that we are both simple and complex. And from the householder perspective, or from someone who's engaged in the world's perspective, there are some things that occur within your life experience that is just not going to go away. It's not changeable. This is unchangeable reality at the moment in time. The whys and the hows are not even that important. But with that aspect of your experience, whether it be you sitting with your eyes closed and just not understanding why you're not going anywhere, that you're just maintaining this place where it's not very interesting or that is challenging, or whether it be within your day, your particular work situation, or your relationship, or whatever it may be, to, from the very, very center, from the core of all of your experience, see and connect to the simplicity, to the space between, because that space between also exists inside. So at the center of every cell, every atom, every particle is the same. It's all just potential, which is now manifested as a particular frequency, and it will maintain that frequency until it has been relinquished of its duty. But if we can maintain a connection to the core experience of that which is pure, and then allow it to manifest outwards into the construct which we are engaged with, that we must work with, then that complexity begins to make so much sense. Because now you're no longer attempting to be the teacher of the intelligence within your life, attempting to rein it in and say, where are you going? You must go this way. Instead, you're becoming the student, an incredibly good listener to the intelligence and wisdom of your life. everything happens for a reason, right? We know that. We know that intuitively, intellectually, poetically, comic reliefly. So if you know, then why do we do what we do? Well, it's because we are still learning. So if we can just position ourselves as the student. Even if you are the best teacher around, or if you are the smartest individual in this city, the way that the smart individual or the great teacher achieves that place is from becoming the student and allowing this universe, which is filled with mysteries beyond belief, to just keep wrapping itself around you and whispering its secrets into your ear. Thank you very much, everyone. Namaste. So now let's continue till next Wednesday, this practice of inner and outer. So your meditation time spent with your eyes closed is quite literally your eyes open as well. And your life, eyes open, is quite literally your meditation time spent closing your eyes. And if we can erase the lines that say this is inner and this is outer and this is outer and this is inner, then we have incredible synergy within our life and reality. And if we can add this book ending, if you want to take that on, just 10 minutes is all you need. Morning, night, morning, night, morning, night, morning, night. Let's see what happens. See you all very soon. Thank you again.